This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
But just to really encourage anybody who's listening, like, these families are often drowning. And if you can just step in and offer something, that means the world to a family like mine. We feel like we're being seen. And I think that's a big thing with families like ours. We just feel like we're unseen.
Are you caring for others while working and trying to live your own life? Wondering how to find the time for your own health and happiness? Well, you're in the right place. The Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, which is part of the Whole Care Network, is the show where real family caregivers share how to be happy and healthy while caring for others. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Elizabeth Miller. I'm a fellow family caregiver, a care advocate, a professional speaker, author, certified caregiving consultant, and certified senior advisor. If this is your first time listening, thank you for being here. This is a show produced bi-weekly to help family caregivers integrate self-care and caregiving into their lives. Each episode has an accompanying show notes page. If you'd like more detail about the topics, products, and resources we speak about, or you want to see any of the related photos, you'll find the show notes by going to the website happyhealthycaregiver.com, and underneath the podcast menu, click the image or episode number for today's show. The link for the show notes will also be in your podcast platform's episode description. Now let's get to it. Let's jump into this episode. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Before we get into this wonderful episode with Jess Ronne, I have a few things on my own that I would like to share with you. First of all, I want to say that I am grateful for you. I am grateful for you listening, and I do love it when you share ratings and reviews, because that's how other family caregivers can connect to the podcast and connect to the guests that we spotlight on this podcast. Your ratings and reviews have helped expand the show's reach and impact more caregivers' lives by connecting to the resources that we offer. If you have not yet left a rating and review for the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast yet, please consider doing so by visiting HHC Pod Review. This can be a simple sentence or two sentences, or it could just be simply a 5-star review, like the one that Jen P shared. She said, "This is a go-to podcast for anyone caring for family members in our complex times." Thank you, Jen, for leaving this rating and review. Your kind words and your stars are like little tips in my virtual tip jar. I'd like to thank our episode sponsor for today, Rare Patient Voice. Did you know that you can earn cash in exchange for your opinion? A Rare Patient Voice, or RPV, helps connect researchers with patients and family caregivers for over 700 diseases and conditions. RPV provides the opportunity for you to voice your opinions to improve medical products and services while helping you earn cash rewards. If you're interested in joining the RPV panel, head over to rarepatientvoice.com/Happy Healthy Caregiver. I wanted to share what I'm reading right now. Well, I've committed to finish all of my book club books because, frankly, I love to just participate in the conversation when we attend those. And we recently read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. It was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards in the famous romance category in 2023, and it had an average rating of over 4 stars. Here's the premise. It's an overworked and a grieving book publicist with a perfectly planned future. She hits a snag when she falls in love with her temporary roommate. He exists in the past, 7 years ago to be exact, and she quite literally lives 7 years in his future. Since it's a romance, you kind of have a feeling that they're going to fall in love and hope that they find a way to permanently be together. I listened to this one. Actually, I listened to it on Spotify, which I didn't know as a premium member you could get your audiobooks there. And I found it to just be okay. It's a magical realism contemporary romance story. I found there to not be enough romance, frankly, between Clementine and Ewan. And my book club said it reminded them a little bit of a movie with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves called The Lake House. I think this book was a bit overhyped for me, and I gave it therefore 3 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads rating. My favorite thing that I want to share with you this week is a cologne spray, frankly. It's called Emerald. I'm not really a perfume person. Most of my life, I've been more of a scented lotion type of person. My mom was a perfume person, though. She had 2 scents that she wore all the time. Chanel No. 5 was her going out scent and definitely makes me think of her when I smell it. My sister Susie likes this scent too, and so other family members of mine wear it. So I get little whiffs of mom when I smell that. And yeah, for everyday use, my mom really wore Emerald. She was an Emerald person. I'm not positive, but I think my Mimi or my mom's mom was one too. Emerald is made by Coty, and it came out in the United States in 1921. It has top notes in the fragrance of bergamot, lemon, and orange, which maybe that's why I like it. It's all of those scents that I really like. When my mom passed away, I kept this bottle of hers so that I can sniff it, frankly, and think of her. Usually I keep it on my dresser, and when I'm putting on my jewelry, sometimes I just take a little smell of it. Sometimes I have a little chat with my mom. It just makes me think of her, and it gives me an overall good feeling. My mom also had a great tip. She said to keep your old perfume bottles, remove the top, and put them in your underwear drawer or a drawer where you want your things to smell better. So that's a great way to kind of stretch the perfume for even longer. I am going to link to my favorite thing, Emerald. And while I'm keeping my empty bottle of perfume, it's still a scent that's available that you might want to check out. Let's meet our guest in the spotlight. In this episode, I am shining the spotlight on Jess Ronne. She shares her powerful caregiving journey from supporting her late husband, Jason, through brain cancer to raising her son, Lucas, who lives with profound disabilities, alongside 7 other children. Jess is an entrepreneur, author, speaker, podcast host, documentary producer, and passionate caregiver advocate. She opens up about the stark contrast and support she received during different caregiving seasons and how anger fueled her resilience as a young widow with 4 children. Jess also shares the incredible story of how a perfect stranger connected her with her now husband, Ryan, despite them both living in different states. Now, in another season of a major transition, Jess and her family have created a group home where Lucas is thriving. With newfound space in her life, Jess is focused on healing from years of trauma, being present, and intentionally choosing which responsibilities to embrace or surrender. This episode is packed with valuable caregiver resources, inspirations, and hope. And for a limited time, head over to Happy Healthy Caregiver on Instagram, where we are sharing for the first time this podcast release, and figure out how you may be eligible to win a copy of Jess's book. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Jess. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to kind of dive into your story. And I know we've got a lot of resources that we're going to be able to share with folks. We do kick off the episodes with words of encouragement, empowerment, inspiration from stuff I've collected over the years. I call it in the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. So I wanted to get your thoughts on today's. It says, things work out best for those who make the best of how things work out. So things work out best for those who make the best of how things work out. And that's by John Wooden. And I always like to look up these people. I'm like, who are these people that are coming up with these quotes? And so my husband would probably know, but he's a legendary basketball coach. I did not know that, but
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. But what are your thoughts on that? Things work out best for those who make the best of how things work out.
You know, a word that has been a guiding force for me the past couple of years has been surrender. And really, along with surrender is acceptance of what is and what is not. And I think that's what that quote is saying. Surrender into what your life looks like in this moment and find joy and stay present and go with the flow, go with the energy. And you'll be amazed at what doors might open because of your surrender and your acceptance.
Yeah, it's hard, I feel like, especially as caregivers, we we want to hold the reins so tight. I know I did anyway. I wanted to have control of everything. And then coming to the light of realizing that I really didn't have much control of anything. And once that kind of happened, I accepted and let go of it. To your point, like the flow of things, and even with the flow of my business, the flow of caregiving and family and all of that, like, yeah, letting go. So I love that your focused word is surrender and then acceptance. So nice. Tell us a little bit, Jess, about your personal caregiving story and your personal caregiving experience.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I really became a caregiver in 2004 when I went to what I thought was a routine ultrasound appointment for my second child. And it was there that we were told that he had experienced a stroke in utero and there was very little hope. He did hang on and I hung on and I gave birth to him on August 12th. He came out screaming with life, and after undergoing brain surgery and spending 2 weeks in the NICU, we were sent home with our baby with kind of this umbrella diagnosis of special needs. And honestly, I didn't even really consider myself like a special needs mom. I didn't even consider that Lucas had disabilities. I was just thrilled to be going home with my miracle baby, and we were just going to do everything possible to give him the best life that we could possibly give him. And we went home and life was very challenging. He had a 2-year-old size head at birth because of all of the cerebral spinal fluid buildup in his head. So he never slept and I never slept because I was terrified if he would happen to flip over on his belly in the middle of the night, he would suffocate himself. Delayed in every aspect of life, but I just kind of chalked it up to his head size. You know, of course he can't crawl or walk because he has this huge head. He'll get there. His body will get there, and just super optimistic about it all. And we finally kind of got into our groove when he was about 3, and I ended up pregnant again with our third child, who would turn out to be a daughter. Gave birth to her in 2007, and that's when my husband Jason started having all of these health problems. Extreme weight loss, disorientation, vision problems, and he ended up passing out at home one night, was rushed to the local ER where they discovered a baseball-sized brain tumor. He underwent immediate surgery and it was benign at that point. So we were told we could just watch and wait. We didn't have to pursue radiation or chemo. And we were told, you know, sometimes these tumors don't come back for like 20 years. So just go home and live your life. And that's what we did. We went home, ended up pregnant again. We did want 4 children.
Okay.
And a couple of months after we found out I was pregnant again, his cancer returned. And this time it was malignant, and it was a glioblastoma. And he passed away 14 months after that diagnosis, exactly 1 month before our infant son Joshua turned 1 year old. So at that point, I was a 33-year-old widow with 4 children under 7, including Lucas, who had profound disabilities.
Wow. So Lucas was your first?
Second.
He was your second. And wow, 33 years old, a widow with 4 children, and you know, caring for kids, caring for a husband, juggling all of that at that time. Like, how did you do it? Like, what, looking back, like,
I look back and process it too, and I don't even really know. I mean, I had 3 in diapers while my husband was in hospice. You know, I'm nursing a baby and wiping my husband's sweaty brow as he's dying. Like, there was a lot of anger during those days, you know, going back to that word surrender. I really only surrendered in the final 2 weeks before he passed away. But in those 3 years of that intensity of life with 4 children, including one with numerous disabilities and a husband who, you know, brain cancer is a very cruel taskmaster. And anger, looking back, was kind of that fuel source that I tapped into. Because anger gets you out of bed in the morning. You know, it keeps you going. It's not a super healthy fuel source, but it does keep you going. And now, in retrospect, you know, I've learned to tap into other fuels for that energy when life begins to feel overwhelming.
Mhm.
But I had a lot of help during Jason's cancer journey. Like I didn't cook a meal for 3 years. I didn't do my laundry. I mean, people were willing to take my children outside of Lucas. Lucas's needs kind of made him challenging for a lot of people, but they would help with my other kids. And so it was literally just day by day, getting through day by day. And then that surrender component coming in really about 2 weeks before Jason passed away, where I was like, I am not in control. God, I do not understand why you would give me such a heavy burden this side of eternity, but I surrender to your plan and your will for my life. And, 14 years later, it's pretty incredible to see what he's done with my caregiving journeys.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing like how your faith was questioned, how you feel angry, like definitely all the stages of grief, right? And we experience grief even while people are still alive, right? And we're losing pieces of what we thought our life was going to look like, and trying to process all of that. And I'm so glad that you had lots of help physically, right? But emotionally, it's still a really hard journey while you're dealing. And your late husband's name is the same name as my husband, and then you're like
Oh,
talking about NICU, and my daughter's a NICU nurse, so I hear all of her stories about that. So it's yeah, you've been through quite a bit in your 33-year-old widow. My mom was also, so my mom we had a blended family. My mom had 4 kids under the age of 10 when her husband died of not brain cancer, but leukemia. And then she married my dad and had myself and my sister. So we ended up being a family of 6. And she called my dad her hero. And I feel like, your life took a different twist too. Do you want to kind of share where you are today and what's going on there?
yeah, it's funny. At Jason's funeral, his mom actually pulled me aside and said, I'm praying for your next husband. And I was like,
Wow.
what? And she said, you can't do this life alone. I mean, 4 children under 7. And I was like, well, if it happens, it happens, and didn't really think much of it. Well, 3 months later, I took my kids out for Halloween, and, we all got dressed up, and I took all the pictures and posted them on Facebook to show everybody I was, living and doing my best. And I still look at those pictures and I just have bags under my eyes. Like I
Yeah.
am just exhausted.
The work it took to get to the picture,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
And not to mention the 3 years of just absolute overwhelm, caring for Jason as he went through brain cancer. And I came home and I checked my blog, which I had kept updated through the years. We had a pretty significant following of people who were praying for us and, offering to help. And checked my blog, and a stranger from Pennsylvania left a comment and just said, I don't know why I'm reaching out to you, but there is this young widower in Oklahoma. He lost his wife to brain cancer 4 days after your husband died. He has 3 young children and he's not doing very well. And I just think you could be a source of encouragement to him. So I found his blog and left a comment, and woke up the next day to an email from this man, Ryan Ronne. And that started numerous emails and phone calls, and we were engaged a couple of months later, married in 2011. He moved to Michigan with his 3 kids. We adopted each other's children, and then we went on to have our 8th and final child together in 2015. And we all lived happily ever after.
Yeah. I mean, an amazing story, right? Like your life gets completely flipped upside down and rolled all around and all of that. And then this person in Pennsylvania, you didn't even know this person, or you did?
No, she followed my blog in Michigan and Ryan's blog in Oklahoma, and just kind of connected the dots and was like, I think you guys could help each other.
Yeah.
So his wife's journey with cancer was very fast. From diagnosis to death was 3 months. So he was just really reeling and struggling, where I had 3 years to process and go through all the stages of grief and really ultimately accept the fact that I probably would not be celebrating a 50-year anniversary with this man who I had married. And so, because his was so quick, that was definitely challenging in our new marriage. Blended is not easy at all. I don't know how much you witnessed in being
Well,
added to the family
I
later
was
on.
the adding.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I would say my 9-year-old too, who was added, probably would be like, it's fine. It's all good. Everything's great. But those first couple of years can be very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we all, every kid has a different perspective, I
Mhm.
think, of their family's situation. And there is a 6-year gap between me and my brother that's ahead of me. And then they had another one behind me so that we would have, kind of be
Each
at the
other.
same age. Yeah. And, like my older sister is, she is I call her my cool mom. Like she's 11 years older than me. So she's, helped she bought the treehouse wood and she would do all the things and I'd have the hard conversations with her that I wouldn't
Mhm.
have with my own mom, I was afraid to kind of bring those up. And then she ended up getting married and having kids late. I got on the younger side. I married my high school prom date. And so we end up having kind of our families around the same ages, even though that we have this kind of gap in age. So, but I do find it, we talk a lot about what that looked like, and it's interesting. And my mom actually wrote a children's book series called The Wadoodles of Hollow Lake, based on this lake in Michigan that we go to, because she was trying to process grief for her kids at that time, who were, the youngest was like 2, but the oldest was around 10. And there was really no books back then of like explaining death and dying to children. And my brother, I have a brother with special needs that now that my folks are deceased, that we help care for him, share the care. He was born with on the autism spectrum and with an intellectual disability. So he had extra, difficulty in kind of processing all of that. So my mom ended up writing this Wadoodles of Hollow Lake to kind of portray human type of issues and problems and concerns in an animal kind of way. Almost I can
Oh,
picture it like a Disney film. So, and that was super therapeutic for her, right? Like writing out these stories. And she used to read those to us, like the typewritten chapters when she was, that was kind of her self-care, frankly, like
right.
looking back on that. So it's interesting, all of the different parallels. Well, you had talked about Lucas, I know, and definitely have your caregiving experience with your late husband, and now Lucas is what,
20.
20 years old.
Mhm.
Holy moly, yeah. So, and you say he has profound disabilities. Like, what does that mean?
He just has a whole long list of disabilities.
A
So
cocktail is what I call
yes, a
them. Yeah,
cocktail,
yeah.
intellectual disability. The experts say he's at like an 18-month-old level. I think that's open to interpretation. I see some things in him that seem far above that 18-month-old level and some things that maybe seem accurate. Severe autism, so nonverbal, incontinent, scoliosis, Chiari malformation, limited mobility, limited vision, hydrocephalus, tethered spinal cord, just really
Yeah.
needs total care for the rest of his life.
Okay. So lives with you and your family, you and Ryan, and or he
No.
lives outside. Did you find? Yeah, tell us kind of like what your adult plan is, because I'm fascinated by it. Like, now I've got a 62-year-old brother, right? Then we're trying to navigate life for him since my folks have been deceased. But yeah, what does life look like for you all with and managing Lucas's care as well?
When Lucas went through puberty, he became pretty aggressive and would lash out even towards his siblings, towards us. He became aggressive towards himself, lots of behavioral challenges. And like I had mentioned earlier, I never even really viewed myself as a special needs mom until he began to go through puberty. And that's when I really started to grieve, like the fact that he wasn't typical and this was not a gig that was going to end. And not only was it not going to end, there weren't any options for families with children like mine. And so probably around 15 years old, I started to think through our options, like what would that look like if we were to eventually create a home for him? And when we lived in rural Tennessee, I was even printing off these huge booklets, from the state on how to create your own group home and just combing through them and highlighting everything and just really processing. And we ended up moving back to Michigan, where we made it apparent to our community mental health organization that we wanted him placed on the list. This was around 17 or 18 years old for a future opening in a group home. And they were like, well, that's great. The list is about 600 plus long. And the only way you're bumped to the top of that list is if something happens to one of you. So like basically you have to have a terminal illness or die, and then he'll be bumped to the top of that list. And then he probably won't stay in the community that he knows and loves. He could very easily be shipped 5 hours up to the UP where we have an opening. And we were like, yeah, we're not okay with that.
Yeah,
so
that sounds horrible. Yeah.
Right. So one of us dies, and then he is shipped out of the only community that he's ever known and loved to the strange wilderness. Like, that's not okay. And so we started talking about what would that look like if we purchased a home and created a group home. And we were fortunate enough to be able to make that a reality.
Wow.
In 2021. So I might have some of his ages wrong as I'm thinking
That's
about
okay.
it. But yeah, in 2021, we, is that right? Maybe 2022. I don't know. 2022 probably. And my husband,
2020s,
right,
yeah.
2022. What are we in? 2025. And my
Yeah.
husband spent the next year renovating this home and needed total renovation. And Lucas and 4 other
Wow.
individuals who need total care moved in last February. So this home is about 10 minutes away from us, and he has been living there very successfully. I'm amazed at how independent he's become, how happy he is. It's almost like he was this young man who was like, I am sick of my mother bathing me and changing me and feeding me. Like, I want some independence. And he is just thriving in this environment.
Amazing.
It was much more difficult for me as I sort of processed this identity I've had for 19, surrender this identity I've had for 19 years. And there was all this space that I didn't even know what to do with. It was so uncomfortable. I mean, I slept with a baby monitor beside my head for 19 years because he would have needs throughout the night. And now all of a sudden it was like I didn't live in that survival mode anymore. And I'm only 13 months post, placing him in this home.
Right.
But every day it still is like that surrender component into what's next, because there is all this space. And who am I if I'm not caring for somebody? I don't even hardly know who I am anymore.
Like Jess, I mean, I call my sister, like, after her changes, like, you're Jess 3.0, 2.0 after your late husband passed. And now, 3.0 is like a huge monumental change. I'm so curious about the group home. I mean, do you have a care manager or somebody that lives there with them, or a couple different people? Like, what does that look like day to day?
Yeah, our situation was pretty amazing. My sister-in-law was a nurse, and she has seen us struggle with Lucas for years.
Okay.
And she started a home health care company to work specifically with our home.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so she manages that. She receives state funding for all of the caregivers. And usually we have about 3 caregivers per the 4 residents.
Okay.
And so they have 8-hour shifts that they, come in and leave. And so there's always like fresh people, which, when you're a caregiver, you're never fresh. You're just exhausted. You're just
Right.
and just so to see Lucas, thriving and even learning all these new skills, it's like, well, of course, he has fresh people every 8 hours. I was exhausted. I mean, you're just like caring for their needs. You're not necessarily continuing to
engaging
teach and engage, and you're just in survival mode. So it was such a good thing for our family. And now it's, I'm still always going to be like a caregiver on some level, because I still have to order his incontinence supplies and, order his meds. And but it's really nice now when I hang out with him, I'm pretty much just mom.
Yeah.
And now when his siblings hang out with him too, they don't have to help care for him. They just get to like hang out and be siblings and have fun together. And so that's just been huge for our family.
I love it. You have in a built-in long-term care plan for him, you know, like, I mean, that's kind of what we're dealing with my family is like, you know, we're all aging and we're like, okay, what is the long-term care plan for our brother? And to your point, the wait lists are long, the places are few. You know, I'm going to see a day program on Wednesday for him and like all of these things because he has not really been integrated in with people that are living with disabilities like himself. I'm hoping that he's going to thrive, you know, in these different settings, but he's been super isolated like most of his life. And yet, you know, there's lots of conflicts that happen out in, you know, neurotypical society that does not understand him, where he gets, you know, kicked out of places and things like that happen. So yeah, we need a pivot for sure. And, you know, in the group home, he's got friends, right? He's got other people he lives with. He's got, you know, to your point, other people that are providing value to his life. And you know, my mom was bedridden for the last 2 years of her life and in my older sister's primary care. But I kept thinking about that too. Like, yeah, we need a break, but they need a break from us too. Like my mom totally, you know, thrived when other people came in. She had different stories. They had different content. They were fresh and all of that. And so it is kind of this mindset shift of like, what if we expand our care team? Here a bit too. So I love this that and where can people find out, like if somebody's listening and they're like, I want to look into this, I want to, you know, I want to see if I can create my own group home, like where would you direct them to go?
I do offer coaching at jessronne.com. I've had a lot of families reach out and just be like, please help me. What do I do? And it's very
Maybe
affordable.
I need to be reaching out.
It's very affordable coaching. I also offer a Voxer option for those who want to just like pick my brain on Voxer. I don't know if you're familiar with, it's kind of like a Marco Polo
Yeah, I was going to say,
walkie-talkie.
yeah, which is a great situation for caregivers where like in the moment you can send something and then in the moment you can check because you're juggling quite a bit too. So
yeah, so 60 minutes a month for $50 and we can just kind of chat back and forth on what you're hoping to create. And that's, yeah, it's a really flexible option for families who have children with disabilities because our time is crazy. Things never go as planned. So
no. And yet my dad used to always say busy people get more done because you have to, like, you're like, you know, you kind of become this, but then to your point, like you're in this phase of transitioning and figuring out like, you know, you used to do all of these things and now you have more breathing room. And so it's an adjustment. I know you write poetry, right? I've read some of your poetry on your Instagram, I think.
Okay. Yeah. That's my medium. That's my jam.
Is it?
I've been writing poetry since I was 8 years old. I still pull it out. And honestly, if I could make a living as a poet, that's what I would do. But I don't think you can make much of a living as a poet. So I offer coaching.
Yeah. Well, and you've got a lot of expertise to share, like in this group. So keep writing the poetry but maybe someday it'll go viral and you'll be able to make a living of that.
I've had one that went viral and
still no pennies.
You still don't make a living at it. No.
I know. It's such a hard space. You know, I know you had mentioned to me too, and you kind of alluded to it, that you had all of this support during your late husband's brain cancer and like people dropping off meals and giving you extra hands with with some of your kids and so forth. And then and now Lucas is older, right? And you know, and in puberty he had kind of outgrew his cute stage. Like how was that, like that juxtaposition of all of that? What did that look like?
I love talking about this because the contrast is severe in terms of how much help. I had so much help, I didn't hardly know what to do with it when my late husband was going through brain cancer versus raising a profoundly disabled young man for 20 years. There has been nothing. And I often think about that, and I think there are a few factors at play here. We could hire help for Lucas when he was still young. And like I said, he's incontinent. So, you know, a 7-year-old in diapers isn't that big of a deal. a 17-year-old in diapers, nobody is
Mm-hmm.
going to step into that situation. And then an aggressive 17-year-old who screams because he's nonverbal, there is nothing there. So I think there is a fear factor of, I don't know what to do with this individual, so I'm just going to pretend like this family doesn't exist, because I certainly don't want them to expect me to help with that child, because I don't want to do that and I'm not comfortable doing that. And I would just say to anybody listening, there is no expectation that you help with that child. But if you could step into our life in some way and take some things off of our to-do list, like picking up meds or transporting the typical kids, that was always very challenging, because we were always playing a divide and conquer game where one of us stayed home with Lucas because Lucas likes his normal routine. And then one of us would go out to the other kids' basketball games or bring them to the roller skating party or whatever that looks like. And we're okay even staying home with our disabled child, but we don't want our other children to miss out on things. So helping transport those kids, or yard work or laundry or whatever, meals are incredible. And then I think about us too as a society. We love short term. It's why we go on these short term mission trips even, and we hang out in the orphanage and we take all the selfies and we feel good about ourselves, but then we go back to our comfortable lives. When you have a child with profound disabilities, there's no end in sight. Like with cancer, there's remission or death, but there's an ending. And this just goes on forever. I mean, Lucas might be 80 years old one day, Lord willing. And we don't know what to do with that as people. I have to keep helping this family. That just feels overwhelming, I think, to a lot of people. But just to really encourage anybody who's listening, these families are often drowning. And if you can just step in and offer something, that means the world to a family like mine. One,
Right.
we feel like we're being seen. And I think that's a big thing with families like ours. We just feel like we're unseen, which might be a segue into the film if you want to go there.
Yeah, talk about the Unseen documentary, how we're failing parent caregivers and why it matters. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that came out of that really intense period when Lucas was going through puberty, and just really thinking, how can we make society aware of the struggles of a family like ours? We were living in rural Tennessee. We were so isolated. There were no resources or support for families like ours. And our house literally started to feel like a tomb. We could not get out into the world because it just wasn't accessible or accommodating. And his behaviors were so challenging. And so I posted on Facebook one day, just, hey, I have this great idea. I'd love to create this film. If there's any filmmaker out there who wants to meet with me, I'd love to set something up. And the next day, this filmmaker and producer from Nashville left a comment on my post and just said, we would love to get together and talk about this idea. And 4 years later, they followed our family around for 4 years
Wow.
through the pandemic, and we created Unseen, How We're Failing Parent Caregivers and Why It Matters. And it's currently showing on ABC. And if you go to the website, caregiverdoc.com, we often offer free showings. So you just sign up for our newsletter.
Oh,
And
I was like, how can I watch it? Yay.
yeah, and then you'll be notified of the next showing that comes available.
Yes. Well, I love that it started as an idea that then evolved into something that is necessary for folks to see. And, I hope that you threw out some ideas of how families could potentially show up for these other families that are feeling unseen. And I think that goes true for anybody, who is in any kind of a chronic long-term caregiving situation. And so maybe it's even putting a reminder in your phone as that friend or family, once a quarter, even hey, check out with the Ronne family and or check in with them to see if there's something I can do specifically. Or even just hey, I'm headed to Costco or headed to wherever, is there anything that you need? Such practical, pragmatic things that really do add up and make a difference.
Yeah, they do.
They certainly do. Well, we're gonna I'll share the website for that, and also I know there's an Instagram link for that. And then aren't you also working on another documentary?
We are, because now my passion is housing for disabled young adults. So
Yes.
I've noticed that most of the things in my life, as long as the thread is Lucas, they turn out pretty successfully because it's whatever like he needs and we need that I go after with all my heart. So yes, now we're creating a documentary called uncertaindoc.com, and it will explore the housing crisis for families like mine and disabled young adults. And we even kind of go behind the scenes for how we created Hope Farm, which is the group home where Lucas lives, and explore some other options that people are doing around the United States.
So good. Well, I know in our area in Atlanta, we have a place in Swanee, Georgia called Annandale that has this long wait list. A family created it. They have independent, semi-independent, assisted and skilled nursing. Like you can kind of age in place there, which I love. But again, long waiting list, expensive. And then there was another kind of, my brother is in some ways high functioning, so he drives. And so that almost became like a barrier for even going there. It's like, oh, well, we don't have anyone here that drives. And I'm thinking like, okay, so he can't drive because
Right.
nobody else here drives. Like, so, everybody is a little bit unique and different that way. And I have kind of connected with a place in Georgia called togetherwecare.org, a nonprofit
Oh, yeah.
that
I'm
you're aware of
familiar.
that?
Yeah. Yep. I'm
Oh,
familiar
they've
with
been
them.
amazing.
Yeah.
So they, because, my brother's a snowbird. So he lives half the year in Michigan, half the year in
Oh.
Georgia, one with one sister in Michigan. And then he lives with my bachelor brother nearby in Georgia. And then I become his primary caregiver when he's down here in Georgia. So like we have figured out how to share the care. But this Together We Care, like the ultimate plan is to get him down here in Georgia because we have more resources for him and we have more family members and my sister may not live in Michigan and she might want to move closer to her kids, so we need a long-term plan essentially. But they have helped us with trying to understand how we could get paid family more money to help pay for his resources. They have helped us connect to a psychiatrist so we could do testing because it has changed. And, he's 62 years old. Mm-hmm. The testing he has as a little kid in rural Pennsylvania was not the same as what's available now. And we just learned he had autism, actually. It didn't really come as a surprise to us, but that combined with his intellectual disability. So they've helped with that. They're helping kind of explore different housing options. So anyway, for Georgia, togetherwecare.org is a great resource. And I've got lots
nationwide. I think it's nationwide. I could be wrong on that, but I do believe it's a nationwide
I'm going to
organization.
double check on that. They have been so great, just for somebody to help you navigate. It's when you're where do I go next? What do I do? And maybe you do something similar, Jess. Do you help people with all of these different things, or do you have kind of niches that you focus on?
I do. In terms of housing, I'm primarily versed in Michigan with what works, but I've talked to people all over the country because I think what works in Michigan can work in another state as long as you're familiar with the right organizations and agencies that you need to connect with and the process that you have to go through. And I know other people in just about every state in America have created something similar to what we've created. So it's possible. I know agencies don't always like to go that route because it's way cheaper to keep the individual with their family than it is to dole out the money to create a group home. So that's always kind of their end goal is to keep the individual with their family as long as possible. But that might not necessarily serve the family
unit. Not everybody's
a
nice... my brother has his moments for sure where he's, it would be really rough on my marriage to have my brother live with me. So I'm grateful.
It was rough on my marriage and he's my son. So
it's
just very draining. Living in survival mode for so many years.
Yeah. And it has a ripple effect on everybody else in your family, as you had mentioned. Well, you also have your business, your overarching business, and maybe that's where all of these things are kind of coming up, is called the Lucas Project. right? Is that
No,
where these? No. Oh,
no,
okay.
that's the nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
my business is Jess Ronne. That's the coaching, the books, the speaking.
Okay.
The Lucas Project is a nonprofit, and I started that in rural Tennessee. That provides recognition, resources, and respite to special needs families.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
so we have a bunch of different programs and initiatives, all listed on our website at thelucasproject.org. We're currently in the process of launching a respite opportunity here in West Michigan that we hope becomes a model for other communities. We offer grants for communities who want to launch their own respite initiative.
Okay.
We have a resource database on our website, a support group on Facebook with over 2,000 caregivers,
Oh,
totally
wow.
free.
I think I need to
And
join it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you should.
Yeah.
And then we send care packages to caregivers. So you can go to our website, nominate a caregiver, and we send a package of
So
goodies.
nice. Yes, I'm going to link to all of that on the show notes. Show notes. And are you still podcasting as well?
I am at Coffee with Caregivers. Not a lot, just one a month. That's about all I can handle right now.
Yeah, I do one every other week, and I'm like, how do people do more than this? Yes, especially if you're speaking and you're doing all of these other things. Like it's a like an octopus with a variety of different legs. But I will link to that too, so people can check it out. And then you've written several books. Is there one that we should highlight today?
Probably Caregiving with Grit and Grace. That's the one
Okay.
related to caregiving. That one came out in December. It's 100 Days of Hope and Encouragement for Caregivers. It is faith-based, so it's just short devotionals. They take about 5 minutes a day. Each one is packed with scripture and just a story from my life. You can literally kind of read it front to back and kind of get the gist of my caregiving journey. It's for caregivers in any capacity, not just parents of special needs children or spouses who are ill, but really any caregiver, I think, could get a lot of hope and encouragement from this book.
Yes. Well, we'll link to that. And then I know when we publish this, we're going to have a limited time giveaway for somebody. So check out Instagram, Happy Healthy Caregiver, for details when Jess is published. So amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think we all need a little more hope and encouragement for sure. So I love that. Let's talk about your self-care. Like I'm talking to you and know now that I've learned more about you and all of the things that you're juggling. How are you able to kind of sustain this? Like what is working for you so that you can sustain and juggle all these different balls?
That's a loaded question. What worked for
Yeah.
me for 7 years was literally living in survival mode.
Okay.
And I've processed that. Like, we either fight, flight, or flee, and I fight. That is my go-to response. I am just going to continue head down, going. And that worked until Lucas moved into his group home last year, and I hit total burnout. I literally went to bed and watched stupid shows on Netflix for like 3 months. My body was just done. I was so tired.
You let yourself.
Yeah, I did. I let myself. I cleared my schedule completely. My assistant thought I was losing my mind because I was like, I don't care. Like, I didn't care if it all burned to the ground. I was so tired. And in that year, really processed, like, I've been going so hard for so long to create all these resources for not only my family, but for other families. What does need to be released? And processed and prayed with my husband for the past year. And I actually just resigned as executive director of the Lucas Project last month.
Okay. That's a big move.
It is
one
a
of your
big move.
babies. Yeah.
It is. I'm still on in a part-time capacity, but I handed that baton over to an amazingly competent individual who is going to have a fresh vision and a fresh perspective to take it to a new level. And I'm leaning more into my books and my speaking and my coaching and consulting, and learning how to rest and giving myself permission to even do things that are enjoyable. Like, I've always wanted to take a pottery class. Like, why don't I do this? And then there are a million reasons in my head. Well, because you have this and this and this and this that you have to do. And it's like, no, I can do
Yeah.
something enjoyable for myself. And that is so hard for me. Um, but I've come a long ways. Even every night, I'll sit in the bath and read a book for 45 minutes or so. I never had the space or the time to do that. There still is a lot of guilt attached to anything pleasurable that I allow myself to do. But
Mm.
working through that trauma and learning how to rest and learning how to surrender to this next phase of life. And
Yeah.
I'm
Well, and
excited.
what kind of ripple effect is that having on the people around you now that you are being mindful of doing that?
Well, I see all of Lucas's siblings who I think they just fell in line for years too. They gave us so much grace because they understood that Lucas took so much of our time. And now they're like, ooh, mom and dad have time. And they have like, whoa, we're like, oh, we don't have that much time. Like we
Yeah,
still,
unless you want to take a pottery class with me, then I'm
exactly. We can go do
yeah,
pottery.
yeah,
So we're kind of like, whoa, okay, there's some time and we can definitely be more engaged. But mom and dad are also, wanting to heal a little bit from all of these years of trauma. So, uh, and I've had to learn too, just because I have this space doesn't mean I necessarily have to fill every single moment with
yeah,
things that I couldn't enjoy so much before, like, nights out with girlfriends. That just couldn't occur because I wasn't going to leave my husband with 8 kids plus Lucas. Lucas was like a job on his own, really. So
yeah,
one of us would usually take care of Lucas's needs and one of us would take care of the other 7 children's needs. Um, so I don't know. I feel like it's going to be fun to maybe talk about this in a couple of years when I'm more removed from
yeah,
the trauma and can really speak into how I had, or maybe I won't be speaking at all in a few years. Maybe
yeah,
I'll just
maybe, yeah,
be in a villa in Italy, like resting.
yeah, which is fine, which is okay too. What are some of your favorite topics to speak about, by the way?
I love to talk to caregivers about taking care of themselves.
Okay.
And now trauma care has become a really interesting topic to me. Just exploring all of the modalities and tools that have been so instrumental for myself.
Hmm.
Somatics has been huge in allowing my body to heal. Steps, like getting my 10,000 steps a day movement has been huge and kind of shaking out a lot of that trauma.
Yeah,
And then a lot of faith-based topics as well. I'm a big believer in leaning on my faith and allowing the Lord to really sustain me and strengthen me. And I love speaking about His goodness and how He's led me to so many of these amazing opportunities in my life.
yeah. Yeah, and especially when you were feeling early on, like, why me? Why, and how that has evolved in your relationship.
Yeah, for
It's,
sure. And I
it's,
mean, it's pretty incredible because it was like a woe is me. I don't want to do this. I mean, I laugh because if anybody were to become a caregiver, it would not be me. Like, I'm not the sympathetic individual. I'm a getter doner. Like, I'm a problem solver. But when my
yeah,
kids are sick, they do not run to me. They run to my husband. Like, he's the sympathetic, loving, patient.
yeah,
And I'm like, here's your bucket. Don't throw up
yeah.
on the couch. Like,
It's funny. It's funny you say that because it's like, yeah, it's not everyone is into caregiving has that whole nurturing type of.
hmm
I would say I'm a tough love caregiver for sure. Like I'm gonna push back and make you do things for yourself, which I don't think is a bad thing, but I also think I'm a better cheerleader for caregivers than I am a hands-on caregiver.
Yeah, I am too, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
would
that's
say for
okay.
sure. Yeah, I look at caregivers and I'm actually more concerned about their well-being than the ones that they're caring for,
Same. Yes.
which is why
And
we're in
which
the
is why we're here.
yes.
Yes. Well, let's talk about self-care for a second. So this is my book, Just for You, Daily Self-Care Journal. I picked out some prompts to share with you, Jeff, to see what you think here. Um, let's see. What's your current go-to healthy breakfast if you eat breakfast?
I don't eat till noon. I
Okay,
do
what's your noon thing then?
I usually do cashew yogurt with homemade granola.
Oh,
I
yum.
intermittent fasting has been very beneficial for my body, so I just eat between 12 and 7 every day.
Okay. Love that. And homemade granola sounds yummy. What's the last good movie you saw? Doesn't necessarily have to be that you went to see it. Or are you
I watch the same movies over and over and over again. And they're movies from my college days. So
okay?
Benjamin Button makes me cry every single time.
So if you need a good cry,
Armageddon. I also nap every single Sunday, and I put in either Notting Hill because it'll put me right to sleep. Not that it's not a good movie. I've just seen it 500
yeah,
times.
it's like, I know what happens. I'll catch it next time.
Right.
Yeah.
Or The Holiday is another one that can put me right to sleep.
Yeah. Good. I like that. What helps you deal with the difficult challenges that life brings your way? Like if you're having a bad day.
I'm a foodie, so I often will, like yesterday, well, it wasn't a bad day, but I've been exploring this concept of fasting. So I've tried a couple of 24-hour fasts, just to see how my body reacts and the kind of clarity that I get and stuff. And so yesterday was one of those, and I knew that when my fast was done, I really wanted a good meal. So I made this huge homemade pasta dinner with its cream sauce
Yeah.
and homemade bread and this banana cake with this cream cheese frosting. And cooking is really soothing for me. So if
Okay.
I can get in the kitchen and cook something really nice and soothing where I know like the end of my day is going to end on a very positive food note, then that makes me very happy.
Yeah. And then it brings your people together. You can
Yeah.
share stories. I love that. Do you have like in case people ask, the intermittent fasting, like, is there a resource that you would share there about how you're getting started with that, how you're learning about that?
Yeah, I have some books, but I can't see
Okay.
the titles of them, but there are
No worries.
so many books on Amazon about it.
Okay.
And it's like
Well,
a brand new thing for me, but I've noticed it has really helped with the inflammation in my body. And I think when you live in that caregiver role for so long, that we definitely accumulate a lot of
holding
that
it.
inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of things that we can work on. But and what I'm hearing you say too, Jess, is like you're curious and exploring it, and that is also what has helped me on my caregiving and self-care journey. Is just like trying on different things and
Mm-hmm.
seeing how they make me feel. Keep what's working, ditch what's
Yep,
not.
exactly.
Yeah, and so sharing that with caregivers, it's like we're all different. What's going to work for you is going to be different than something that works for me. Anything else that you wish that we hit on that you want to leave us with, and then also how do people stay in touch with you?
I think you alluded to it at one point about staying present. And I think that is the biggest thing that's the biggest message I want to convey to caregivers. I think so often we get stuck in the past and the guilt of maybe what we should have done, or we obsess about the future and all of these what if questions. What if my loved one dies, or what if we never get a home for our brother, or what if my loved one never goes into remission, that we fail to stay present. And I would just encourage every caregiver to understand that joy is only found in the present. It's in each present moment that we are blessed to share with our loved ones. And we waste so much time and energy sort of obsessing about the past and the future. And if we can train ourselves just to stay present, and it is a training, it's not natural at all, and remind ourselves to stay present, I think we'll experience a lot more joy in our lives.
Yeah. How did you, I mean, is it like when you catch yourself thinking about the future and you're like, snap out of it? Yeah.
Yep. It's like a muscle we have to train. Like, stop. And for me, it's wasting energy. I hate waste. I hate waste in like food or time or energy. So that's what does it for me. It's like you're wasting your energy when you could just stay present and remember that's where the joy is found.
Nice. I love that. And then how do people find you? Where should they go?
I am at jessronne.com. And then anything about the Lucas Project is at thelucasproject.org. And then the documentary caregiverdoc.com.
Okay. We're going to link to all of that. And do you have a favorite social platform you like to hang out on?
I'm kind of anti-social media right now. But I'm on Facebook at Jess Ronne Official, and then Instagram, Jess plus the mess.
Okay. We'll link to those too. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jess, for being vulnerable, for sharing, for providing your light after, some heavy traumatic things that have gone on in your life. And I think a lot of hope and healing. And I appreciate the conversation today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network. I hope this episode provided encouragement and practical tips to infuse into your life. You'll find the show notes and all the resources mentioned at happyhealthycaregiver.com. I also invite you to check out previous episodes of the podcast that you may have missed. If you enjoy the show, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Ratings and reviews also help others discover the podcast, and sharing with a fellow caregiver is a great way to spread support. Stay connected with me between the episodes by following Happy Healthy Caregiver on your favorite social media platforms, and subscribe to the weekly newsletter where every week I share something happy, healthy, and care related. Just visit happyhealthycaregiver.com to join. Until our next episode, I'm Elizabeth Miller with a reminder to take care of you. Are you still here? Well, it's time for the disclaimer. I am not a medical, legal, or financial professional, and I am not providing medical, financial, or legal advice. If you have questions related to these topics, please seek a qualified professional. I have taken care to spotlight family caregivers and experts, but their opinions are theirs alone. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the written permission of Happy Healthy Caregiver, LLC. Thanks again for listening to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.